hurt you. All red lamb just to tease you. None of these toys on lease to. Made your whole year in a week too. Main bitch out of your league too. Side bitch out of your league too.
We've had this blue McLaren P1 arrive for a 4-litre upgrade. Super excited about this one. We've never built a P1 before, so it will be our first time doing an engine build on a P1. Not only will we be building it, we'll be going through all of the systems on the car to ensure everything is operating at 100%. This car's got some very complex systems like the aero system. It's unique to the P1. The hybrid drive clutch is unique to the P1. And the accumulator system is unique to the P1. Been wanting to work on these for a very long time now. Really happy that it's here. Thank you to our client for the trust. With an asset like this, you need to ensure that it goes to a shop that knows what they're doing. Let's get on with it.
House so empty, need a centerpiece. 20 racks of table come from ebony. Cut that ivory into skinny pieces. Then she clean up with her face, man, I love my baby. You talking money, need a hearing aid. You talking about me, I don't see a shade. Switch on my side, I take any lane. Switch on my core if I kill any pain. Look what you done. I'm a motherfucking star boy.
So everything's more or less the same. The P1 gets an extra unit for the air brake, but other than the air brake, it's the same as the Senna. I don't really see anything different. One cool thing, the gearbox gets air coolers, because on the other McLarens, the gearbox is water cooled.
This is the McLaren original tool that can suck all the fluids on the system. Now it's sucking all the fluids from the system.
Two really important things you need to do before working on a McLaren P1. First up, disconnect the hybrid voltage kill loop. This is a little connector. It plugs in next to the battery in the front area. You want to disconnect that to disable the hybrid battery. Second, you want to disconnect the hybrid voltage fuse on the inside of the car. Behind the seats in the middle, you'll find an access cover that looks like this. You want to unscrew it and remove this hybrid voltage fuse. Once it's been disconnected, you need to put the cover back on in case someone, decides to stick their fingers in and kill themselves because it's 600 volts. Some pretty sick things on the P1. The intercoolers are the same design as the 650S and the MP4. They're not completely welded. They're like sealed on one section. So unfortunately it is something that will fail one day, even on the P1. You've got a master cylinder for the clutch. The hybrid system has a manual clutch, so this engages and disengages the clutch. And you have an air brake control module. The air brake on the P1 is a lot more advanced than the air brake on, say, a Senna or a 765. So you've got a full standalone control module here to control the air brake. It's got a really big catch can, much bigger than what you would get on a Senna. It's got auxiliary radiators for the clutch oil to be cooled. But yeah, I guess there's lots of room for improvements on this. All right, we're gonna drop the engine out. Comes out like any other McLaren. We'll also check a bunch of other things whilst the engine's out. We'll check the health of the engine. We'll separate the gearbox from the engine. We will check the health of the wet clutch. We'll also check it for leaks. There is something leaking between the engine and the gearbox. I don't know if that's the e-motor or the crank seal, which is really common on these. But yeah. We'll go through it all. Here we have the P1 clamshell off, so it's just one massive piece. It's actually very impressive because it's made of carbon fiber and it's one piece of carbon fiber. It showcases what McLaren were capable of 15 years ago.
I told him seven, bro. It's almost 7.
I said 7.
It's almost 7. It's almost 7. I told you, bro.
We're going to pull the HDA apart. HDA is the hybrid drive assembly. It's a unit that goes between the engine on a P1 and the gearbox. So if you come around here, This is the engine of a P1, the same as the engine on any other McLaren or 3.8 litre McLaren, nothing fancy. Obviously the turbos are slightly bigger with it being a P1. It's still got rubbish log manifolds, which are really bad for EMAP. So on a regular McLaren, you would have in this area here, the AC pump. On the other side of the crankcase, on a regular McLaren, you'd have the alternator. But with this being a P1, a hybrid, it doesn't have AC pump here and it doesn't have an alternator here. What instead it's got an e-motor in this area, really big, heavy, 30 kilo e-motor. I think the motor makes between 200 and 300 horsepower just from that unit alone. The e-motor serves as the starter motor and it also functions as the alternator. Now, where does the AC pump go? The AC pump goes where the alternator would usually go on a McLaren, and the hybrid drive assembly unit, which is this little casing here, assembly here that goes between the engine and the gearbox. This is what drives the AC pump through this gear here. The P1 has a manual clutch for the hybrid drive motor. This would usually be bolted on to this side, and this cylinder here pushes the forks in and engages or disengages the manual clutch. So this is the hybrid drive assembly in the P1. Inside the hybrid drive assembly you have another cylinder here to control the clutch. You have ancillary gear here to run the AC pump, and you have the input shaft for the e-motor. So to engage or disengage the e-motor in the car, there's a manual clutch in the car, and that manual clutch is controlled by a separate module. So you remember the slave cylinder or the master cylinder we spoke about earlier? Here you have the other half of that contraption. It sends fluid into here through these holes, and this comes out like a piston and it goes back in. When it comes out, it disengages the clutch. So this is the clutch that sits on this half of the crankcase, and there's friction plates on the other side that engage or disengage the clutch depending on whether the e-motor is active or not. Unfortunately, what's happened with this McLaren is the hybrid drive assembly has started leaking. When the hybrid drive assembly starts leaking, it leaks wet clutch oil into the casing between the crankcase and the gearbox. When that happens, you've got a manual clutch in the middle. The oil goes onto the friction plates and it just destroys those friction plates. Another thing that's happened on this McLaren is we're hearing a really loud rattling noise and false misfires on idle. And from the 650s and the MP4s, we know that that's usually because the springs on the flywheel, or the DLD as they call it, have failed. So this is the flywheel or the DLD in between the engine and the gearbox. So you see this? The springs shouldn't be loose. When the springs go loose like this, they've lost their tension due to, you know, all the heat cycles and the stress that they go through. And when they get loose, you see it's slightly damaged here as well. So on McLarens, the engine ECU monitors the crank position through this sensor here. This sensor here monitors these teeth on the DLD. On a McLaren, this would be spinning round as the engine is turning, and this sensor is measuring your crank position. So the purpose of this unit is to serve as a damper between the engine and the gearbox. So when you put it into gear, you're not getting any nasty jerks. When you switch to reverse gear, you're not getting any nasty jerks either. When these springs get loose, this, instead of rotating in one direction, it jitters in position. So when this jitters, the engine ECU picks that up as inconsistent combustion, which leads to false misfire codes. Usually you'll find that if this area is rattling in your car and it sounds like it's a flywheel, and you're getting misfires on all 8 cylinders, but the engine sounds okay otherwise, it's usually the springs inside the flywheel that have failed.
So how come something like this happens on a car that's run only like 100 kilometers? Is it like time-based? Is it mileage-based?
Well, this car has under 10,000 kilometers, but it only gets driven on the racetrack. It's power-based. Unfortunately, this is an early design of a DLD. This is the same DLD they use on early 570s, 650s, and MP4s. The springs in these will fail one day. They do deteriorate. You know, when McLaren were making cars 15 years ago, they didn't have all the data that they have now to prevent stuff like this, but it is a wear item. Unfortunately, we don't have an upgrade for this particular DLD at the moment. It's made by Alcon. If we start seeing more of this, we will work on an upgrade, but for now, it will be getting replaced with a factory brand new unit. We're now going to take the HD assembly apart to service it and replace the seals, because any oil leaking from the HDA assembly will go onto the dry clutch and it will destroy the friction. So it's paramount that you ensure that your HDA assembly is not leaking on your P1. So now on this, we're going to pop this clutch off and we're going to take it apart to see if any of the frictions are damaged, because, you know, whilst we're in here, you don't want to rip a P1 engine out multiple times. So we will check that. If they're damaged, we will be upgrading this clutch unit as well. And yeah, servicing the HDA assembly, that's quite an interesting one because there's a bunch of special tools for it.
Any pain. Look what you done. I'm a motherfucking star boy. Look what you done. I'm a motherfucking star boy.
Alright guys, so with this manifold on the top of this engine, might be a really familiar sight. We've had plenty of engines in here. You know, this might be a 650S engine or a 570S engine, but I bet you guys would be shocked to know this is actually a McLaren P1 engine. But with it being a P1 engine, what is actually different? So with this being a really early model McLaren, they started designing this thing back in 2011. It's actually got a lot of MP4 parts on it. Something really unique on the P1 that isn't so unique on other McLarens is if I turn this engine round here, you can see this is the coolant pump, which is bolted to the block and connected to the timing chain of all McLarens. Usually on the back of the coolant pump, there's a connector that connects it to the AC compressor. On this car, you don't have that. In this area, you have the E-motor and the AC compressors on the other side. So you can see this coolant pump here is totally blanked off. There's nothing that would connect to it. Other than that, it is just a McLaren engine. The crankcase has some small differences, some machining differences to accommodate for the E-motor. So you can see here, for example, there's no mounting points for AC compressor to go on. You'll also see that how we know this is a MP4 cylinder head is because the secondary air injection ports are on the intake side instead of being on the exhaust side. So if you see here, there's an internal casting tube that runs from the exhaust side to the intake side. So on this build of engine, we're going to be upgrading the connecting rods, of course. We're going to be dropping in a 4-litre crankshaft, which has increased displacement. We're going to be swapping out the P11 cam phasers. P11 is the MP4-12C, so it's got MP4 cam phasers in there. We're going to swap them out for 4-litre cam phasers, which are from the P14, 720S. They've got 20 degrees of more movement on those cam phasers, and they're a bit more reliable. We're also doing a full refresh of all the timing chains, the tensioners, because you don't want to open a McLaren P1 engine more than once. It will of course be getting our GTR coils, all of our upgraded bearings, and a custom tune. I'm super excited for this one. Always wanted to build a P1, and we're gonna make this one really special.
Let a nigga bracket, legend of the fall, took the year like a bandit. Bought mama a crib and a brand new wagon. Now she hit the grocery shop looking lavish. Star Trek groove in the Wraith the Con. Girls get loose when they hear the song. 100 on the dash, get me close to God. We don't pray for love, we just pray for cause. House so empty, need a centerpiece. 20 racks of table cut from ebony. Cut that ivory into skinny pieces. Then she clean up with her face, man, I love my baby. You talking money, need a hearing aid. You talking about me, I don't see a shade. Switch on my side, I take any lane. I switch on my core if I kill any pain. Look what you done. I'm a motherfucking star boy. Look what you done. I'm a motherfucking star boy. Every day a nigga try to test me, yeah. Every day a nigga try to end me, yeah. Pull off in the roadster SV, yeah. Pockets overweight getting hefty, yeah. Coming for the king, that's a far cry. I come alive in the fall time, the competition, I don't really listen. I'm in the blue moon song, bumping new edition. House so empty, need a centerpiece. 20 racks of table come from ebony. Cut that ivory into skinny pieces. Then she clean up with her face, man, I love my baby. You talking money, need a hearing aid. You talking about me, I don't see a shade. Switch on my side, I take any lane. I switch on my core if I kill any pain. Look what you done. I'm a motherfucking star boy. Look what you done. I'm a motherfucking star boy. Let a nigga Brad Pitt, legend of the fall, took the year like a bandit. Bought mama a crib and a brand new wagon. Now she hit the grocery shop looking lavish. Star Trek groove in the Wraith the Con. Girls get loose when they hear the song. 100 on the dash, get me close to God. We don't pray for love, we just pray for cause. House so empty, need a centerpiece. 20 racks of table cut from ebony. Cut that ivory into skinny pieces. Then she clean up with her face, man, I love my baby. You talking money, need a hearing aid. You talking about me, I don't see a shade. Switch on my side, I take any lane. I switch on my core if I kill any pain. Look what you done. I'm a motherfucking star boy. Look what you done. I'm a motherfucking star boy. Look what you done. I'm a motherfucking star boy.
Alright guys, so we have the HDA assembly on the P1. This is the extra add-on that the P1 has that no other McLaren has, other than perhaps the Speedtail. So on this hybrid drive assembly, you have a master cylinder here. So hydraulic fluid goes into these holes, in, out, and it activates and deactivates the master cylinder, which in turn activates and deactivates the dry clutch. The dry clutch is what engages and disengages the hybrid drive motor. Unfortunately, what happens on P1s is clutch oil starts leaking from the cylinder seal. So when that happens, oil escapes from this area here. It goes on to that lovely dry clutch that sits between the engine and the gearbox. It gets onto the frictions and unfortunately it destroys the clutch. This is another leak point. This is the shaft for the hybrid drive motor. This seal starts leaking and same thing again. The oil leaks onto the crankcase and it goes onto the dry clutch and it destroys the clutch. This is the dry clutch that we removed from the P1. As you can see, there's just oil everywhere. It's totally destroyed. Make sure you don't have any leaks in the gearbox area, because this little clutch here is around $30K. So you do not want a gearbox leak on your P1. Today we're going to be changing the seals on the hybrid drive assembly and giving it a complete refresh, as well as a brand new dry clutch. So now with the e-motor shaft cover off, we're going to pop the e-motor gear out of the cover so we can change this seal here. Right, so this is the e-motor gear, and this is the seal that we want to change. We're going to pop the old seal out now with this 3D printed tool. Hybrid drive gear cover going back on. We will drop the new seal in now. Now it's all cleaned up, and then we will change the seals on the cylinder over here. So we've now removed the clutch actuation cylinder here from the hybrid drive assembly. This is one of the seals that leaks onto the dry clutch. So you can see it's quite a poopy seal. There's no constant tension in the middle. Rubber, dries up, it gets old, it ages, it shrinks, so it's not very suitable for a car that sits and does like 1,000 kilometers a year, if that. We upgrade the seal to this. Like the crank seal upgrades that we have, we use constant tension seals. So constant tension seals have got a spring inside that over time allow the seal to stay sealed. So this seal needs to go into here. We have some special 3D printed tools. So you have two parts of the tool. You have this part and this part. You put this over this. The seal goes over this like this to go over nicely. You put this over that and you go boom. It drops in nicely. We're gonna add some lube because things go in nice with lube, as you know. Obviously this 3D printed plastic tool is a one-time use tool. We'll get another one made. So we have this, it's an actuator slash slave cylinder. You see you have this hole here, and you have a hole here inside the HDA assembly. So what actually happens is clutch or gear oil goes through these two holes, and it pressurizes the cylinder in here, and this pops out and it actuates or engages and disengages the dry clutch. So now we've replaced the HDA seal here. We're going to drop this back in, not without replacing the two seals. Alright, so we're going to replace the gearbox perimeter seal. Very important seal, very expensive seal actually. Last but not least, we're going to drop an upgraded differential in here, which will help a lot on the track coming out of exits with traction. Alright, with all of the upgrades now carried out on the P1 powertrain, on the gearbox and on the engine of course as well, We're now going to drop the powertrain back into the car and fire it up. Really looking forward to this. First P1 4 litre. Once it's fired up and we snag it all, check for leaks, do its first oil change, we're going to move it to the dyno, do some baselines and see how much power it makes. We also have at the same time Senna engine out. This is going to be getting our fully built engine. It's going stage 3 plus, so it will be around 900 wheel on pump gas and around 1100 wheel on ethanol. So we've put a base tune onto the ECU, just some simple changes. Obviously we've changed the displacement of the engine from 3.8 to 4 litres, so we've added that change onto the ECU. We've also deleted the secondary air injection system, so we've removed those codes from the ECU. We've changed the dwell times on the ECU for the GTR coils, and yeah, that's more or less it. But yeah, let's fire it up, see how it goes. That was very uneventful. Because it's got a hybrid drive motor, it starts up so much faster than a regular engine with a starter motor. So on the P1, the battery, the motor control unit and the motor are all cooled by the coolant circuit on the car. Very, very important that these items get cooled by coolant because you do not want an overheating hybrid drive system. Now we have our coolant leader hooked up. It's generating a vacuum inside the cooling system so that once we open the valve to put coolant in, it will suck coolant into all of the, what usually would be air cavities. It's a long, boring process and very noisy as well, as you can see. But yeah, something that's got to be done. So we did 2 pulls now. First pull, the thing with fuel pumps is when they start failing, it's not just on or off, you know, they start to get weaker and they're not very consistent. So first pull, you can see the foreground, we got great power, nice and smooth. Second pull back to back, you can see the fuel pump crack and we lost power. That's why the car hesitated at red line. We'll get this off the dyno. So this is the battery that we pulled out of the P1. This is a Generation 1 McLaren battery. We're going to drop in a Generation 3 battery, which is this puppy over here. Smaller form factor, I believe it's lighter too, and it's got higher output voltage. Just going to drop this in, see how the P1 performs with the new voltage. So this one, obviously, we're going to get a bit nerdy and weigh them. This has got the battery weight written on it, which is 12.7 kilos. We'll actually check if that's accurate. And this doesn't actually have the battery weight on it. This is lighter.
No shot. Maybe it's because it's like
yeah,
drained.
This is lighter. This is probably about 10.
Because
no,
it's drained.
It's probably about, this is about a kilo lighter. Put it on.
No shot.
Reset the scale. 10.2. Told you it felt lighter. And this should be just under 13. There you go. P1 back on the dyno. We've been slowly turning the power up and then we noticed a hesitation. Initially I thought, okay, hesitation. I checked the logs, fuel pressure was dropping. And then we logged the fuel pump duty cycle. Oh, Thanks. Lunch. So all 3 fuel pumps running at 72% usually tells me that it's a fuel pump dying. So then, you know, I concluded that. But then I went home, I checked the logs again, and I checked battery voltage. Battery voltage drops from 14.4 volts to 12 volts. And that's exactly the same time when the fuel pressure drops. So as we all know from all our fuel pump testing, we boost the voltage on the fuel pumps, we get more fuel pump pressure out, and we know what happens when there is not enough voltage on the fuel pumps. You get fuel pressure crashing, you get a loss of fuel pressure. So turns out the 12 volt auxiliary battery in this car was the original one from 2015. We swapped the auxiliary battery out for a Gen 3 unit, and now we're going to continue with some dyno runs, you know, see how the fuel pressure is now and see if we got rid of the hesitation that we saw before as well. Should see a little bit more power as well without even touching the tune. And yeah. First things first, on the P1 we don't have M-Tuner yet. The hours that go into creating a tuner suite like M-Tuner is like, you're talking like thousands of hours to have a finished product. And if there's only like one P1 on the planet that wants to be tuned, it doesn't really make sense, you know? You'd rather focus your efforts on like a model that's more popular, like the 720, the 750. So we're tuning this the old school way, that is via bench, and logging it with a separate data logger. We did some polls, we've slowly started turning it up, but we've noticed right away one of the 3 fuel pumps may be dying. So now I've added some extra monitors on the logger suite so we can monitor what the fuel pumps are doing, and if we perhaps need to replace one of the fuel pumps. McLaren P1 fuel tank. You see 3 fuel pump controllers here, and you have 1, 2, 3 fuel pumps. So 3 pumps, 3 controllers. The newer McLarens, like the 720 and up, they use an E5LM pump. These are more like a Walbro 450. So it's like one of these is half of a 720S fuel pump. They use 3 of them in this. In the 675 LT, they use 2 of these. A fresh set will last another 10 years. So we'll do them one at a time. Let's start with the first pump over here. is finally done. All checks complete. Now we will begin the process of getting the rear clamshell reinstalled back onto the car. Going through the final calibration setup suspension for the P1. As a final test, we're going to put it into race mode and then take it out.
I'm tryna put you in the worst mood. P1 cleaner than your church shoes. Really point to just to hurt you. All red lamb just to tease you. Look what you done.